Club of Toledo's Monday meeting featuring guest speaker Randy Gardner, Chancellor of Ohio Department of Higher Education. But first, I'll ask Fran Anderson to deliver the reflection and Matt Adkins to lead us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. As we gather together today as Rotarians and friends, we acknowledge that wherever we go, we are always in your presence. We pray that our actions may reflect this awareness for whatever our future will bring. If we face disappointment, help us to learn patience. If we face sorrow, help us to learn sympathy. If we face pain, help us to learn strength. If we face danger, help us to learn courage. If we face failure, help us to learn endurance. If we achieve success, help us to learn gratitude. If we attain prosperity, help us to learn generosity. If we receive praise, help us to learn humility. If we are blessed with joy, help us to learn sharing. If we are blessed with health, help us to learn caring. And as we stand before you today, help us to learn the value of service above self. May your radiant spirit guide us and our loved ones all of our days. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Fran, and thank you, Matt. I'd also like to thank Browning Kuzno, June's weekly meeting sponsor. Thank you, Rotarian Brent Kuzno. At this time, I would like to ask any Rotarians that have guests to please come up to the floor mic and introduce them. That's not the floor mic. It's over here.
Okay, so I have a guest with me today. His name is Aaron Lusk, and he's the new superintendent for the Maritime Academy, and he will be, or a Maritime, that's not what I meant, Maritime, it came out of Maritime, that's Pig Latin, but anyway, Maritime Academy, and he will be joining our Rotary Club as a new member, so please give him a warm Rotary welcome.
Thank you, Kathy. A couple of quick updates. So this is our second live meeting, and I want to thank all our members for their commitment to Rotary and specifically to your membership to the Toledo Rotary Club. Our club has remained strong throughout the pandemic. Perhaps even we've become even stronger with our commitment and our continued participation. Your beliefs in the Rotary ideals and our club through your willingness to meet remotely for so long until we could get back together in person. Again, I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. As we transition and prepare for the new 21-22 Rotary year. And along those lines, we're having a year-end club assembly tomorrow, June 15th, 4:30 at the Toledo Club. One of the main functions of the club assembly is to provide updates from our transformational projects and have committees hand off assignments from chairs to vice chairs, or even new leaders of that committee, of those committees, I should say. All chairs, vice chairs of the committees, incoming chairs and vice chairs are invited to attend. We'll also begin the transition, as I mentioned, from the current administration to the new administration. So looking forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. Now I'll ask Executive Director Kathy Tate to the podium for an introduction of our club administrator, Abby Mortimer Sachs, for some quick housekeeping updates on RSVPs and a couple other items. Kathy?
Thank you. Wait. So you let me up here 2 times, but it's almost the end of the year, and this is the first time in 65 weeks that I've been at the podium. So, no, I just wanted to, before I introduce Abby Mortimer Sachs, I do want to thank everybody because it is the end of the year, and I don't know if he'll let me up here again, but just, you know, this year with the Zoom and everything, everyone has just been so terrific, especially those committee chairs and vice chairs that I've worked with, because it's just been a real challenge for all of us, which leads me to the point of Abby. We are on a learning curve here at the Toledo Club with a new venue and the RSVP and the square challenges that many of you have had. It's like some of you, there's a challenge, and some of you, there is not. And so Abby's going to speak to that specifically. But one of the things, and I know I get these questions, is we're not set up, well, we are set up, but we're not set up. So we're at the Toledo Club, so we have to give a count every week of how many to expect, and then that's how many we have to pay. So that's why we did it through the Square system. And we're not really equipped to do cash, although we've taken some cash, and everything is forgiven last week, this week, if we missed you. I don't know. Abby's working on that. But it continues to be a challenge. So I'll invite Abby Mortimer Sachs, who's done a great job with trying to figure this out. And she's our club administrator, and she will explain everything that I don't even have to think about.
That was scary. Thanks, Kathy. Okay, thank you to everybody. I know that the RSVP process has been new and tough, and I appreciate everybody working through it. Just a couple of things to reiterate, again, why we're pushing this online. Tickets need to be purchased online prior to the meeting. I know I've gotten some cash, but we can't take cash. We have no system to do cash or change for that matter. So the big thing is to try to learn it. If you have questions, I want you to reach out to me and I will walk you through the process, okay? Send me an email, call the main office. I will gladly walk you through the process. Every Tuesday, there's an email. So there's several ways you can RSVP, and I don't mean to bombard you, but as we get in a rhythm, right? Tuesday email, I'm going to Rotary next week. Boom, I'm going to RSVP, pay my ticket, I'm all set. There are several ways to get to that link. Like I said, Tuesday, you'll get an email that's specifically for RSVPs. In the spoke, there's a link to RSVP. There is a link on the front page of our website to RSVP. There's also RSVP link in your Monday reminder. So it's everywhere to see. So hopefully you can find that. Also, I've had a lot of questions on confirmations. When you hit submit, you get a little sentence and it says, thank you for submitting your reservation. When you do that, you have RSVP'd to me. I have your name as an RSVP. But if you're going to eat lunch, you say, yes, I'm buying a ticket, and it takes you to the page everyone has a hard time with. I understand that. We're trying to work with Square. There are days it works beautifully. And every time you guys call, trust me, I go through it. I've bought so many fake tickets. I can't, Kathy and I have these code names. Who's Debbie Smitherson? Well, that's me. We were checking it out again. My kid's on there, everybody. So we are checking it. It should work, but like I said, please let me know. So what I do real quick, and then I'll let you go, is I look at that who paid and I look at who RSVP'd and they don't match. And that's okay. I don't want anyone to be hungry, but I'm going to get you then at the door. You can call me, give me your credit card, buy 10 tickets, and I'll put you on a list. So whatever works best for you. Okay. I hope that answered. I can't, there's not techie stuff I get into, but the process should work. So call me. Try not to bug Kathy, because then she's like, I'm gonna fix it. But I'll help you, okay? Thank you, everybody, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Abby. So even though the Rotary office doesn't accept cash, I do. Okay, so if anybody wants to help me out, I'll take it. And I'll give it to the Rotary office, which meets the 4-way test. Finally, I'll invite Membership Engagement Chair Maria White to tell us more about the event planned on June 24th at the National Museum of the Great Lakes. Maria?
Thank you, President Alex. Ahoy, mateys. I am hoping that all of you will join me on June the 24th at 4:30, from 4:30 to 7 o'clock at the National Museum of the Great Lakes, which is located actually pretty close to here and is number 56 on the top 100 things you need to do in Toledo before you die. So you can just cross this off your list and join us at 4:30. We're going to start with a scavenger hunt. I knew that would get a laugh. With a scavenger hunt on the Colonel James, I think it's pronounced schooner. Murph, am I right? Are you here, Murph? Murph, our own Murph, is on the board of this wonderful, wonderful organization. And their director is also a member of the Rotary. So please support this event. It is our first in-person, non-masked event since, because we had a mask at the last one in October, in 65 weeks. So we have two requests. One is if you could RSVP, because we're providing free beer. There's another good reason to attend. And the beer truck needs to know how much beer to bring. So please RSVP, but our RSVP process is super easy. Just call Abby, okay? Call, text, email Abby, and she'll get you on the list. The second thing is we need about 5 more volunteers to serve as kind of tour guides, kind of station masters, if you will. We've got a scavenger hunt that has 8 different stations. At each of the stations, you will collect a prize, and everyone who gets all 8 of the stations on the hunt will then be entered to win some really, really nice prizes at the end of the scavenger hunt. So come at 4:30, between 4:30 and 5:15, you can get into the scavenger hunt, and at any point in time, you can come and drink beer, eat snacks. We're hoping to maybe have a food truck there. We'll definitely have lots of food, and it'll be a great time. So please join us, and please call Abby. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you for all you do for the Membership Engagement Committee. At this time, I'll ask Bob Savage to come up to the podium and introduce today's speaker. Bob?
Thanks, President Alex. And Kathy, in 2 more weeks, you won't need to ask Alex permission for anything. It's my pleasure today. It's good to see all of you for one, and great to be out and about with more of you. My pleasure today to introduce Randy Gardner, who is no stranger to all of us who've been in Northwest Ohio, but is now the state chancellor for the great state of Ohio. We're pleased to have Randy here today. Most of you know Randy hails from Bowling Green. He previously was in the state legislature, in the House and the Ohio Senate for 33 years. Prior to that, following the education theme, he was actually a teacher. Before that, and a little bit of a businessman as well. But I've known Randy for a bit, and I've worked more closely with him recently, and I didn't know how far his education roots went back, but certainly a deep commitment. Occasionally you see people appointed to political posts, but you wonder whether they really had any background there or not. With Randy, there is no question about that. In addition to having good background, and I know many of us in the room know Randy, he's been a thoughtful and dedicated leader and champion for our region as well, and for his his territories, even though they didn't reach all the way up here. We know Randy has a soft spot for Northwest Ohio. It's actually nice to see in the current state government, we have at least 3 members of Northwest Ohio in the governor's cabinet or at high administrative positions. I'm not sure, but I think that's a record for at least the recent past. In addition to being sharp and having done this for a long time, not only has Randy held those positions, and we've all known politicians, and quite frankly, we probably think more of some of them and less of some of them. Fortunately, Randy's one of the ones that we look up to, and we would all be better off if we had more Randy Gardners in assorted positions. Just to not only show his good background, but his commitment. So in his 33 years in the legislature, Randy, on roll calls and votes, Randy made 10,443 votes in a row. He has never missed a vote since he has been in the Ohio legislature. I guess in the legislature, they sort of referred to him as the Cal Ripken of the Ohio legislature. I think here in this room, we'll put him, well, Walt, is he allowed to be in your group? We'd call him the Walt Churchill and put him up there with Dick Anderson and Clint Mock as well. But not only is he a good, sharp guy, but absolutely dedicated as well. Randy and his wife Sandy live in Bowling Green. They have 3 grown children. And as the state chancellor, Randy oversees all of the 2-year and 4-year colleges in Ohio, both private and public, as well as the Ohio Technical Centers. And without further ado, Randy Gardner.
Well, that was, overdid that a little bit. My mom wouldn't even believe all of that. Well, thanks for having me. This is just a great honor. I was so excited about coming, did my homework, wanted to wear my Rotary colors, my University of Toledo, since I'm on this side of the river, trying to do everything right. Great to be with Bob. I'll say a little bit about Bob. Let me say something about Fran Anderson's prayer today. Where are you, Fran? I listened very intently, and I want to, whether I have to go back and watch the video or whether you have a copy of that, I want to borrow that. That was really profound. It really made me think about if we have things, we give back, and I just thought it was excellent. So you made an impact on me here at lunchtime, Fran. Thank you for that. And Walt Churchill, when I was running for office, I don't think I'm going to do that again. I used to say great things about Walt Churchill. And I remember the last time we were in the same place, I explained why that is. Because when you're running for office and you know someone who's got better name ID than you do, you'd be really nice to them, right? So they don't. So it's great to be with you as well. And Zach Isaac's here. His father and I worked on a number of projects, including things that weren't even my Senate district in Bryan, Ohio, sir. But when he went to George Voinovich and said, if you want that project, you have to work with Randy Gardner, that was all it took. So miss him very much. What a great leader for our area as well. And just so many people. When you come to a meeting like this, there's so many people you've worked with, and I probably made some errors already in not acknowledging others. But what I like to do at meetings like this, and by the way, I watched last week's meeting. It was exciting. I got to hear Ted Long and all the history and the places to visit. So I really tried to prepare, and I thought I usually in luncheons like this, I like to ask a few questions, history questions or trivia questions to get started. But I thought, I don't know if that'll work with the 10th largest Rotary Club in the world and all the business and community leadership. I mean, questions like, just think to yourself if you know these. I know these are probably going to be offensively simple and easy to you, but the first governor of Ohio, who was that? I know you don't want to show off, I know. Does anybody think they know? Does anybody think they know? No? Interesting. And I do that, I shouldn't do this. But it's interesting how, as Ohioans, if you ask someone who the first president of the United States is, everyone obviously knows. Almost no one knows. Edward Tiffin. Edward Tiffin. And so now you've learned something today for me that you didn't know before. How about that? How about this one? Now there's some political, in fact, one former party chairman, two former party chairmen perhaps in the room right now. How about the governor of Ohio immediately following George Voinovich? How about Nancy Putnam Hollister? She was governor for 11 days before Bob Taft was sworn in on the 14th of January as governor. George Voinovich left for the U.S. Senate, and for 11 days it was Nancy Putnam Hollister. She actually signed a bill. She was the official governor. Anybody know that? You're just kind of holding back on me? All right, I got one more. This is real. This is as we speak, real time. The governor of the state of Ohio. How many of you think you know the governor of the state of Ohio's first name? Raise your hand if you think you know. Very good, sir. Thank you. Richard Michael DeWine. So if you were paying attention, I won't tell on you all, but if you were paying attention at the inauguration a couple years ago, you would have heard him say, I, Richard Michael DeWine. But most people just know, of course, as Mike DeWine. But a few things just to note. And today is Flag Day, by the way. I have to admit, I didn't know who the father of Flag Day is in this country. Anybody know? Anybody happen to know that? I didn't know that. And I thought I might get that question today, or that might come up as part of a Q&A with the club, and I thought I would really show off. And no, so it's Bernard Sigrand in 1885 from Wisconsin, then eventually moved to Chicago. He's a dentist. That's pretty much my program. What else? Now, wait a minute. Now, I'm going to assume that applause means that's okay with you. That table back there, are you really tired of me, folks? I don't know. I was a school teacher, and I see a lot what goes on. Body language, eyes, things. So be careful out there. 33 years in the House and the Senate, actually 12,106 days. And when I was named chancellor that evening, I told my older son who was with us, and I said, I've just been named chancellor. I'm not going to be a state senator anymore. And he said, well, because House members and Senate members, 2 years or 4 years. He said, how long is that term for? And I said, it could be 1 week. And he said, you signed up for that? And by that, I mean, you serve at the pleasure of the governor. And so any hour he decides he wants someone else, and that's it. There's no appeal. There's no collective bargaining rights. There's nothing. So I've been privileged to serve for almost 2.5 years now in the governor's cabinet. And it has been very exciting. It's been very challenging, especially with a major pandemic. But I'm not going to get into the politics of Governor DeWine. You all can decide for yourselves which positions and policies and that you like. But the one thing he did say at the very first cabinet meeting that sticks with me every day, because I serve at the pleasure of the governor, and I don't have 360,000 bosses now. I essentially have one that I report to officially, and that's that you listen carefully to people and that you act with a sense of urgency. Don't allow the listening carefully to get in the way of our need to act decisively and with a sense of urgency. And I'll just give you one example of that. And I think this really describes how Mike DeWine serves as governor. During the pandemic, we were listening to health officials and infectious disease experts and a lot of people in that arena, college presidents, of course, all the time doing Zoom calls, phone calls, and at one point I thought, the one group that I haven't spoken to closely enough are students. So we had 3 weeks in a row of what we call the Chancellor Student Roundtables, and we invited 57 different students from 57 community colleges, 4-year public, private, around the state, to basically a listening session and an input session with me. And on one of those occasions, the governor joined us. And he was just asking for their input from students. How's it going? Do you feel safe on campus? How's learning going, et cetera? And several students brought up that they were concerned about mental health issues. And one of them, a student from the University of Akron, basically talked about how there were longer wait lines to get answers from the mental health clinics, there were slower wait times, kind of explained that to the governor, and he's just staring into the monitor there and into the students and says, it shouldn't be that way. 2 days later, he tells me and the director of mental health and addiction services, Director Lori Chris, put a program together because we have to do something about that. And then 2 weeks later, we were at the controlling board with a program, first in the country to respond to the pandemic with direct mental health supports, additional mental health supports for students around the state. A program that then a week or two later, checks were in the mail. That's how decisively, that's how much with a sense of urgency, that's how he listened so closely and carefully to a real-time need and didn't want to wait till the next state budget. We were able to utilize some federal dollars that were flexible, and the governor prioritized those dollars, $13.5 million to campuses throughout the state. Just an example, a real-time example of what I mean when I talk about his listening and his leadership. What does the chancellor do? Every day, there's a different answer to that, but we have 14 public universities, 24 regional campuses, 23 community colleges, 74 private or independent colleges, universities around the state, 52 Ohio technical centers, often affiliated with adult career centers, kind of the old JVSD program. And we have a program called Aspire, which is a program that helps adults who don't have a high school diploma to get one, to get a GED or high school equivalency. 680,000 or so Ohioans don't have a high school diploma, adults. Amazing. And there are 1.3 million or so Ohioans who have gone to college, but stopped out, paused out, dropped out, don't have a college degree. 1.3 million Ohioans who have some credit, some attendance, but didn't finish. So these are real areas of need and real areas of opportunity for us. So we have more than 200 entities that I work with, and what I call the diversity of opportunity in this state. We have more types of institutions. We have more types of opportunities for students to fulfill their potential occupational needs here, their life's goals and desires. I really think we have more than most states, and I'm not going to say every state, but more than most states, we have that diversity of opportunity. I'm just going to talk about a few of a few initiatives that you may or may not be aware of, and then try to leave it time. Back in the day when I was running for office and I might get in big trouble with an audience, I would filibuster and nobody could ask a question. But I think it'd be better if we had an exchange of ideas. I like to do that. So Choose Ohio First is a program that was actually established by John Husted, Lieutenant Governor, when he was Speaker in 2007, 2008. And that's basically a STEM-related, science, technology, engineering, mathematics program where we give scholarships to students who are involved in those programs. It's a pretty effective program. It's increased our STEM. We know that that's a value-added importance to our state and our economy. And that program is, again, funded with an increase in the current state budget. OCOG is something called Ohio College Opportunity Grant. This is need-based financial aid. Under this governor, we have got about a 44% increase in need-based financial aid. But if I told you where we stood versus other states, you'd say more work to do. And as a state rep or state senator, I never admitted to anyone that I thought I was satisfied with anything. Anybody in public office that says, I'm satisfied, we're doing all we can do, time for a new one. So, Governor, if you're listening, I'm not ready for a new chancellor yet. So we're not satisfied. We have more work to do, making progress, more work to do there. Something called tech cred. We got a number of business people. Anybody know what tech cred is in here? Anybody familiar with it? Have you worked on it at all? If you have not, I would encourage you to visit. If you've got a small business, small, medium-sized business especially, techcred.ohio.gov. This is a program that basically reimburses incumbent workers who need upskilled, reskilled, and this is a program that's been wildly successful, $30 million in the last state budget to provide these credits. So these are credentials, industry recognized credentials that help train and upskill and strengthen businesses and strengthen that employee who may just need a credential or two on top of maybe their master's degree or their bachelor's degree or their associate's degree. It's really been an outstanding program. So perhaps we need to do an even better job of getting the word out on tech cred. The last thing I'll speak to is this pandemic has made it even more difficult to maintain enrollments and therefore to maintain attainment, which is real important in the state. And some of you I know have all kinds of ideas about how important or not college might be or post-secondary credentials. But let me give you a statistic real quick that I think is for a credential, and we're talking about even credentials, not just traditional four-year college, but associate degrees and industry-recognized credentials and certificates. If we increased by 5% Ohio's attainment, post-secondary attainment, that would mean, and a combination of associate degrees and bachelor's degrees, not all in one. If we did that, we would increase the state budget either through savings in social programs or increased tax revenues because of increased wages and lower unemployment by $1 billion. 5% increase in attainment equals $1 billion better for the taxpayers or for programs you care about. So what a deal. And so it is really, I think, important for us to find ways to increase attainment, opportunity for young people. And what I'll say as I hit on the next topic before questions, and that is many young people and their families don't really know what opportunities exist. We have to do a better job of making sure that we not push them to a certain outcome or a certain arena, but that we provide as much information as possible so they can learn what opportunities are for them. And quite frankly, how affordable higher education can be, way more so than many of you may think. And the one area where we need to do a better job is having families, students fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA form. Some of you I know are probably quite familiar with it. It's a real challenge. And then during this pandemic, when school counselors weren't seeing students every day, it was even more difficult to keep those FAFSA rates up. FAFSA is not just for, in fact, it's not for qualifying for federal loans. These are federal grants to need-based students, to families in need, to students in need. And it really gives them a much better idea as to whether and what type of higher education, post-secondary opportunity might be affordable for them or fit their needs. We have a program, and I'll just say my good friend who introduced me today, Bob Savage, something called Toledo Tomorrow. And he is the president of Toledo Tomorrow. It's one of the newer college access groups. So candidly, he'll admit there's more work to do there in Toledo than perhaps some other places that have had major college access organizations in the past. But this is terribly important work, working with school counselors, other organizations, and finding ways to encourage families to complete the FAFSA, to encourage schools to make sure that students have all the information they need to make the best decisions they can. So I would encourage you, if any of this sounds interesting to you, Bob Savage would be the one to contact and to talk with, and I'm hoping you'll do that. I'm hoping a few weeks from now, Bob will say, "Hey, Chancellor, we got 15 more people signed up for Toledo Tomorrow because of your remarks. Will somebody do that for me? How many, maybe should I do a show of hands and then put it on video right now because people are watching all over. No, I won't do that to you. But it really is something important, and it's something that you can see into the future and see the impact that makes on this community. Because I'm telling you, whatever your post-secondary opportunity is, statistics are unmistakable. Higher wages, lower unemployment, better healthcare outcomes for individuals. So I encourage you to be involved in that. We want to do a better job of increasing our attainment because we care about the state, and I know you, as Rotarians, certainly care about this great community. So thank you for that, and I'm glad to take questions, and if there's time for questions.
So if anybody does have any questions, please come up to the floor mic to ask your question, and we'll also check the Zoom chat room for questions. On time.
Hi, good afternoon, Chancellor Gardner. Thanks for being here today. I was wondering if you've seen any best practices throughout the state in which they're working to retain students within our state and our community so that we're not an exporter of talent. And then my other question is, what other best practices are you seeing where institutions are working with businesses to ensure that students are coming out qualified, skilled, and ready to be employed? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. That's actually, I'm really extra glad you asked it because it's something I probably could have shared, didn't share in my remarks. There is a perception that there is a significant loss of talent, loss of students, people exiting Ohio. The brain drain, concept or phraseology. And actually a couple of years ago, when I learned that Ohio has now become a net importer of students, I started trying to fashion this brain gain, phrase. And then I looked it up on the internet and I found out that there's some medication called brain, or thought, I'm going to get in trouble with some, but we are now third best in the country net in having more students come to Ohio for college than leaving our state, than high school students leaving. We were not that way about 15 years ago. And so this isn't all about me at all. These statistics have, essentially nothing to do with the last year or two. But it's really important for the future of our state because in terms of high school graduates, the demographics don't work. We're going to have fewer high school graduates 8 years from now than we do today in the state. It's been declining. And so just in terms of our workforce, in terms of talent, in terms of growing our businesses, strengthening our economy, there's no question that out-of-state talent will be helpful to Ohio. And so that's important. The governor, in an address to state trustees in December of 2019, asked them to do this. He said, even though it's not a state law and I don't have any money for you to do this, if there's a student from wherever in the country that came to Ohio for their undergraduate degree, for their bachelor's degree, and they want to stay in Ohio to get their graduate degree, their master's, we want you to provide in-state graduate degree rates, tuition rates, for any student that wants to stay here. And it wasn't a mandate, but the governor had enough rapport with higher education leaders in the state that every one of our 13 undergrad public universities has now adopted that policy. So I consider that part of our efforts. Something else that has happened around the state, you've probably seen, and I know this is going to be a 3 C's, but I'll say it anyway. We've got Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland where we have these significant programs where there's investment, there's capital. And so we're going to look to expand that in the next couple of years as well to other medium-sized areas around the state where you can put significant skin in the game in a community. Jobs Ohio would be a part of that as well. And so these are things that we can do that we think can really make a significant difference. But it's in part an attitude. It's an attitude about how we care about our future. And we also have to have adults who have stopped out back into higher education, back into post-secondary. So it's a combination of all of those things. But great question and a real issue for the state. Thank you. Yes, sir.
As colleges and universities are going to have students on campus for the first time in a year and a half, how's the Department of Higher Education getting ready for potential gyrations in labor supply, material supplies that the private sector is going through?
Okay. All right. Thank you for the question. Actually, I would push back a little bit in terms of having students back. Most of our campuses with residential populations, a majority of their students stayed on campus. Our community colleges, which are not so residential, except 2 of them, did a lot more online learning. We had a lot of hybrid. We had some online, but in many of our campuses, many of them retained 70, 80 to 90% of their residential students. Depends on the campus. But the one thing we learned, and the one thing I remember receiving some pretty strong language from some people in the state saying, how can you keep students on campuses at all throughout the state? Students aren't going to wear a mask. They're not going to get tested. They're not going to pay attention. They're college students. And the one thing I would tell you is our experience from last year was the rates, the infection rates of COVID were smaller by quite a bit in most of our communities around the state than they were in the surrounding community around the campus. In other words, our college campus, the dorms and the residential living, by and large, we were more successful in holding back the pandemic on our campuses than we were in other areas of the community or other communities in the state. It still means we have more to do. I think one thing you're seeing not much in Ohio is anyone attempting to require vaccination to live on campus. But if you don't get vaccinated, many of the campuses are saying you're going to get tested once or twice a week. So there's some incentives. There's some other incentives that colleges are looking to do to try to keep their campuses as safe as possible. But it's an ongoing challenge. You know, these students are customers, they're consumers, and you better meet the needs of the customer and consumer. And so some of it's going to mean different modes of instruction. Some of it's going to mean, providing different variations of allowing them to want to be retained and to stay a part of your campus community. But overall, the enrollment is still not rebounding on many of our campuses. And when students, unlike Rotary, which those Rotarians who have stopped out or paused out will come back because they'll come back to Rotary. But a lot of times if a student pauses a year or two or stops out, it's very difficult for them to come back. It's just that's the way life is. So we have to work even harder to make sure we're providing what students need to continue their higher education journey. Yes, sir.
I'm very grateful that you mentioned the mental health issues at the university level. And it's sort of a segue off of that a little bit, but as an employer and as Rotarians, we're very keen on developing critical thinking skills, but we're seeing a major challenge of the unofficial educators that you find in the social media channels that are causing huge problems, not only for those who are gainfully employed, but for those who are coming up. And I'm wondering in the Department of Education and your role as Chancellor, if there's any thought about this issue, because that education that they're getting so often is really a negative education and a problem for us as employers.
Okay. I'm not sure I totally grasp all of your but if you're thinking about those who don't value education, don't value critical thinking skills, and is that pretty much the?
It's the intervention of social media. It's a negative education institution.
Yeah. Thank you. I actually have a lot of thoughts about that. I actually spent a little time one time just locating all of the things that were completely false but portrayed as true on the internet, on Facebook or other social media norms. It is just amazing. And I'm going to say this, think about this statement right here. In part because of the internet and social media, we know more today than we've ever known before. It's also true, I believe, that we also know more that isn't true than we've ever known before. And it is so hard to undo that. It's just amazing. I don't know what to do about it. It is really a fascinating challenge. And there's less accountability. You know, when people used to make comments about whether it's elected officials or actions taken by elected officials, you know, they took the time to actually type a letter out or read a letter out to you. Now you just fire away, don't have to have accountability, don't have to cite sources. Somebody else, and people seem to gravitate these days more than ever before to their ideological corners. The liberals got to always support the liberals. The conservatives got to always support the conservative side. It's not fashionable to talk to each other and to try to learn from each other. It's just fascinating. So I don't want to get outside the governor's lane here, but you have identified something that is a real challenge. And if you can figure that out, we need to go to lunch again, sir, because I just think I think we need to utilize all the things that the internet offers to us, but it's a dangerous time because the lack of accountability and the lack of accuracy is just amazing. But a real concern. Yes, sir.
Thank you
Sure.
also for being here today. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Is there a distinction in the role you play when dealing with public universities as opposed to private universities?
Thank you for the question. And I know I'm, yes and no, for the most part, until I became chancellor. Actually, the official website at the Department of Higher Education said the chancellor oversees 2-year and 4-year public institutions. So whether you like this position or not, I think if you're in Ohio, you're attending school in Ohio, you live in Ohio, you matter, and we care about your higher education future. So they didn't even have, we have a map of all the institutions in the state, and in my first couple of weeks, we redid the map and we put all the private independent institutions on it as well. Along with Owens Community College, University of Toledo, and Bowling Green, we put Mercy, and we put Lords, and we put Findlay. You know, I just think the opportunity, that again, the diversity of opportunity, we ought to embrace that and make sure that people know about all we have to offer, and not just in certain sectors. That's just always been my philosophy. My son was a 2+2 Owens and BGSU. Daughter that got her bachelor's and master's at BGSU for dietetics, now works in Toledo in dietetics. Another son that went 4 years to an independent institution, Findlay. So my family experience has been all three of the main sectors, and so I think that's what's important. I think we look at the needs of the individual and the benefits to the state of a highly educated state, and I think that means we serve everyone. Yes, sir.
Yes, you mentioned several times in your remarks about enrollment, and having been involved in local community college here for a while, that's one thing that's been a very difficult thing, is to increase enrollment. And by doing that, like you mentioned, we could possibly increase the number of people that have degrees in Ohio, which obviously if you don't have more students coming in, you're not going to get more degrees. Plus it's great for, I think, growing the higher education in Ohio, what's available. And I've often wondered why there's not a more statewide program to develop enrollment in the colleges, both community and 4-year colleges. I don't know of any program that exists actually, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have, thank you for the question. We have a number of programs. Fitness for Your Future is one, 3 to Get Ready is another. This FAFSA effort is a real intensive program. We put $3.5 million into that, of federal dollars to increase enrollment. I think the important thing is there is a mentality today that higher education, post-secondary education is not that important anymore. And if you look statistically, I look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics every week, and it is just not the case. It is true that not a specific path, but a path in higher education or in additional opportunities, post-secondary opportunities, is real important. So always more to do, always more to do. I know your involvement with Owens Community College. We will continue at the best we can to elevate, because I just think it's important, not only for the state, but for that individual person to be all they can be. And I just think that's our obligation in the governor's cabinet and in the legislature to do what we can. But it's a challenge, no question, but we'll continue to work on it.
We have one question from our online Rotarians.
Okay.
The question is from Tom Brady. And there's a few
I know Tom.
and you know he's pretty cerebral, so he's got a couple of points here. So we'll go through them one at a time. What are the questions for rethinking higher education completely in Ohio? Using technology to share faculty and curriculum between universities and states, recognizing that a high percentage of future higher ed students will be non-traditional, recognizing that we duplicate colleges, faculty, deans, administration, and athletic facilities many times over, recognizing that the concepts of early college and college credit plus could reduce the cost of an 8-year public education rather than making it more expensive, and recognizing that the cost of higher education is becoming prohibitive for our underserved populations.
Exactly. Hey, what do I say? And I've still got 4 minutes left, darn. No, hey, Tom, let me offer this to you, sir. Send me an email. You have my email address. And I will try to respond to some of that. You have brought up a couple things. I will say this, and this is going to be something that will challenge some of you, and some of you say, I don't believe it, and I believe it to be true. A cost of a college degree today in Ohio, in terms of opportunity, is really less today than it was 5 years ago. And I'll explain that in part by what Tom Brady said with respect to College Credit Plus. We have saved students, families in the last 5 years, $725 million in tuition dollars with College Credit Plus programs, simultaneous dual enrollment opportunities. We also have one of the best transfer programs in the country, where you can easily transfer from a community college to a four-year, or a four-year to a four-year. We have one of the best transfer programs in the country. We've made it much, much easier to move in and out of institutions and travel around the state to meet your needs. That's another very important area, I think, to help both with affordability and opportunity. So some of the other things that were mentioned in terms of the underrepresented populations, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this new FAFSA program and provide some dollars and some additional support is because we know that in challenging economic times, those underrepresented populations probably have an even more difficult time, and we've seen a fall off even further in underrepresented populations, minorities, socioeconomic challenged students. And so we have to work even harder to keep them in the game, to have them understand as much as we can that a post-secondary credential or a college experience can be for you. So all of those things matter. But Tom, I'll look forward to hearing from you again. And thank you for your question.
Thank you, Chancellor Gardner, for an exceptional presentation. As our gift to you, we are delivering the Historical Tales of Toledo, authored by Rotary past president Clint Mock.
I know Clint, great man.
Again, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
We'll also make a donation to the Polio Plus Fund in your name. So, as far as Chuck's chuckles, after last week, we've given him the week off. He'll be back next week. Let me see. Okay, next Monday, June 21st, Christy Gustin, Regional Director of the Girl Scouts of Western Ohio. There is one committee meeting after today's meeting. That's the Finance Committee. 1 p.m. We'll meet in the West Point room, which is directly across from this room. So have a great week, everybody, and we're adjourned.